you read this and I'll hold it for you. You will put your right hand on the Bible.
I, Brian Higgins, a citizen of Fannin County, state of Georgia, do hereby solemnly swear and affirm that I will well and truly perform the duties of family zone to the city of Blue Ridge, Georgia. And I will faithfully enforce the law of the city, and that I will support and defend the charter thereof, as well as the Constitution and laws of the state of Georgia and the United States of America. And that I will do all in my power to promote the general welfare of the inhabitants of the city of Blue Ridge and confirm the interests thereof. I do solemnly swear and affirm that I am not the holder of any unaccounted for public money due to the state or any political subdivision and authority thereof, that I am not the holder of any office or trust under the government of the United States or any other state or any foreign state which by the laws of Georgia, state of Georgia, I am prohibited from holding, that I am otherwise qualified to hold said office according to the Constitution and laws of Georgia. So help me God.
Thank you.
And before we start, also Ethan from North Georgia Regional
Development Commission.
I didn't have that written down for you.
Sorry. This is the last one.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was asked to come here tonight in regard to the special land use permit that was submitted for this property on East 2nd Avenue and East 2nd Street, excuse me. And essentially, I was asked to review the staff report and to give a report on that. And as I began to do some research on it and dig in pretty deeply, I found some issues in regard to the zoning ordinance and the short-term rental ordinance. And we have confirmed those with the city attorney and determined that the property in question has a couple of issues. And one of those is that it is a split zone property. And the fact that the plat does say R3, which is your high-density residential zone district, and the property is zoned R3 as well as C2, that the zoning ordinance prohibits any short-term rentals in any residential zone district. In other words, the property must be zoned commercially in order to be eligible for a special land use permit. And after speaking with the city attorney, my initial reaction, and he agreed with, was to look at to essentially table this action and to ask the petitioner to request to rezone their property and go through a rezoning process in order to have the entire property zoned for commercial use, or to apply for that use. Because unless the property is zoned general commercial or neighborhood commercial, one of the three commercial zone districts, it would not be eligible for the special land use permit based on that. So there was a mistake made by the previous land use officer, I believe was the title, who wrote the staff analysis for this application. And again, after some research and working with the city attorney, that was the advice given to us by legal counsel. And that would make sure that we're in conformance with the zoning procedures law and being consistent amongst the various ordinances. Zoning ordinance taking most precedence. And that would mean that the applicant, no action would be able to move forward tonight in regard to special land use permit, no need for a hearing or so forth. And the petitioner could simply refile to rezone their property. And then it could go through the rezoning process and hearing, and then depending on the outcome of that, could then apply for that permit for the short-term rental in the commercial district.
Ethan, did you mention the other, with the ordinance, did you catch that also with the 30 days?
Yes, so in the short-term rental ordinance, it does mention that any parcels or any properties that were being used for short-term adoption of that ordinance, which I believe is July 2019, for that short-term rental ordinance, would be given a 30-day period after that July 9th adoption of that ordinance to come forth and get a permit to be a conforming use. And if a permit was not obtained in that 30-day period, then those properties would essentially not be grandfathered in, and they would be required to go through the rezoning process, and that would make sure that they have the right underlying zoning, in this case, which would have to be commercial to be eligible for that permit.
So where this property is, the property behind it that is on East First Street is commercial, but on either side of it is residential, and across the street is residential, if I remember correctly.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Interesting.
Yes, ma'am.
But part of this property is, you said part of this property is
The,
C2?
according to the zoning map, yes, sir, part of this property, if I may, I'll a couple of those, and you can see the zoning map.
This is weird. There used to be like an easement going through there, that was like a weird,
I think a couple of the properties are actually split right there.
yeah, there's a couple of properties that
Looks
are,
like they are.
that- yeah.
And that is something that our office has come across before, and it is something that recently, when we were asked to maybe print off some new zoning maps for the city that were up to date, that was pointed out to me by our mapping team, and they brought that to my attention because what it can create is issues when that is put on to, say, a tax parcel map, like the tax assessors, and it can create some inconsistencies amongst various parties. And, you know, our recommendation always with the Regional Commission Planning and Zoning is to have zoning overlaid on the zoning map by a parcel basis. In other words, every parcel of land has a single zone district rather than these split zones, because they create these issues.
How precise is the color?
It is it's an overlay that is, it's very precise, and it's from, this is something that has been an issue now for a number of years. I believe one of the former land development officers, Mr. Parsons, and I had worked together looking at this several years ago, and had recommended that it would be a good opportunity for the City Council and Planning Commission to look at doing a map amendment for us to basically correct these, and that's something that we can do as a service to you all, and of course no charge, it's any of our basic services to help create a draft map where we can clear up these split zone properties.
So I have a question. Going forward, you're saying that short-term rentals are allowed in commercial if they apply for the special use permit?
Correct.
But they are completely allowed in the central business district without a special permit. Is that correct?
Now, I believe it's CBD, C1, C2, you can have commercial, short-term rentals, but you can't have them in, of course, residential.
Okay, so,
And according to the ordinance that was written by James Valley, the cutoff period was 30 days for any special land use permit, so really we shouldn't even have been accepting applications according to that ordinance.
well, you know my feeling of,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand why we were even accepting those applications.
And it was really supposed to be after Chuck has been reviewing it for 30 days, because I have been looking at that. And so at this point, with the split lots, you have, like these have commercial on in front, residential.
So they have
back.
a good opportunity to rezone it.
They could, but we're going to try to clean that up one way or the other, whether it becomes residential or commercial or however. Yeah.
So it's a surprise to me.
Yeah.
Should we open it up for questions or not?
No, because at this point, the ordinance does not allow for us to have special land use permits
So it's,
after a 30-day period. So at this point, their only option is to apply for rezoning.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Do you
Yeah.
guys have any questions?
Will we try and move forward with correcting all these that are split? burden is my property? Will each homeowner have to apply individually?
That's a very good question. The city, by zoning procedures law, has the authority to do map amendments, which is essentially the rezoning process. And that can be done in one motion, that can be done in one event, and that's where we would propose a draft map and work with the city professionals to make sure where these zoning districts need to be on these properties, based on the comprehensive plan, future land use map, and based on existing property and conditions, and to create a draft map that the city could then bring forth, present to the public, have a public hearing, just like any rezoning process, and adopt it in that way. You wouldn't have to, the city is not required by zoning procedures law unless otherwise specified in the zoning ordinance to put signs in every yard. It's not, doesn't have to be done on a parcel by parcel basis. It can be done as a whole city map, to where we look at it as really a map correction in this case than a entirely new zoning map. It's just simply correcting some lines. And then that, of course, would have to go through the same public hearing process, legal advertisement, and so forth as any rezoning action.
What about the properties that are currently, under the impression that they can do nightly rentals, and they have a permit?
If they already have a permit, then I think that's a very good question for the city attorney, because that's a case-by-case basis. If they have the proper zoning, I see that there would be no issue.
No, I understand that, but there, like one, I believe was granted that we turned down because of a mistake that was made,
By the city.
but that's the one that came back before us.
It's sold.
Okay, right.
And then it came back before us and it was turned down. Very interesting. Thank you so much.
So it sounds like we're gonna be cleaning this up a little bit.
That's
Because
awesome.
I've noticed some other issues with the map, but not on this particular deal.
Right. We're happy to work with you all on that, and we'll take as much time as we need to work with you all, make sure we get that to a suitable condition, and then that can go through the process, move forward.
Okay. I guess we need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Unanimous?
Big word.
If you're property.
Just comes